How do you do? I'm Sergeant O'Hara, instructor at the Police Institute. Lately, in one of my classes, we've been discussing how to question drivers and witnesses in accident cases. Suppose we go out on an actual investigation and see how a couple of experienced officers handle interviews. This is the accident. Not an unusual kind. Two cars have come together at an intersection. The officers decide between themselves which one will clear the people out of the street and locate witnesses, and who will look for the drivers. Let's watch and see how they go about it. Let's see if we can spot them. Here's a likely prospect. Wouldn't you agree that this man is probably working on his own car? Sure. And there's not much doubt about this man. He's the other driver. Obviously, that officer didn't have any more trouble locating the drivers than we did. But his partner isn't going to have it so easy locating witnesses. That is, witnesses who can and will tell what really happened. Let's see what kinds of so-called witnesses he encounters. The officer has a right to question the witness, and the witness has a legal duty to answer. But the officer has no power to compel him to do so. A witness may be subpoenaed into court and required to tell what he knows, or be punished for contempt. This fellow must be what is known as a reluctant witness. He won't talk. He may have personal reasons, or he may be just plain contrary. Since Mr. Reluctant Witness apparently owns a car, it is a good idea for the officer to take down his license number. He may want to have a later try at this man. Now here's a man who was the direct opposite of the last one. He's one of those overly helpful individuals. Look out for this man. He may have a personal interest in the case. For instance, he may be prejudiced in favor of or against one of the drivers involved. Or he may just want to bask in the limelight. In any event, the officer listens to the man, but won't take his uncorroborated word for anything. And he'll keep his eye on him, because he may give himself away by a knowing look or gesture toward one of the drivers. If it's necessary to solicit the crowd, an effective question to ask is, who was here first? When questioning a person who may or may not prove to be an eyewitness, the officer should always make sure that the person really did see what he says he did. This woman thinks she saw something. To check the credibility of her story, the officer does these things. He asks her to show him exactly where she was when the collision occurred. He asks what she was doing at the time, and how it happened that she was watching the vehicles at the time of the crash. This officer seems convinced that the witness's attention was probably attracted by the noise rather than anything which preceded it. At the same time, the officer keeps in mind that although the witness may not have seen the actual collision, she may have seen an unsafe act by one of the drivers just prior to the crash, which could be a factor. Here are some tips which help when questioning people at accidents. Don't use the word witness or ask a person to be a witness. It scares some people off. Be sure to get the complete name and address of each witness. As a double check, take his phone number. Write down the license number of vehicles in the area. Quite often they can lead you to important witnesses, especially in a hit-run case. While talking with one witness, watch for reactions, particularly negative reactions of other persons within hearing distance. Now the officer seems to have turned his attention to questioning a passenger who may prove to be a good witness, especially corroborating or disputing versions given by the drivers. Even though the passenger is likely to be biased in favor of the driver of the car in which she was riding, the investigating officer knows that it is essential to get the passenger's name and address, where she sat in which vehicle, her relationship to the driver, and if not related, the reason she happened to be in the car. He makes sure that the drivers and passengers at first are questioned separately. But let us get back to the other officer. Remember, he located both drivers before attempting to question either. The officer's first question to each driver is a polite, "May I see your driver license certificate?" Incidentally, by temporarily retaining the certificate, The officer has eliminated the possibility of either driver pulling a disappearing act. Drivers have been known to do this. The officer has asked whether either driver is injured, and he looks carefully for indications of emotional stress, intoxication, and shock. A word of warning: don't be gullible. Don't accept without verification the word of a person that he was a driver. He may have been a passenger who was protecting an unfit or intoxicated or unlicensed driver. Check with the other driver and witnesses to be sure. This officer, being experienced in dealing with drivers in accident cases, talks to the drivers separately. While talking to one, he gives the other driver something to do, like writing down his name, address, age, information about his car, or drawing a diagram of the accident. It is well to remember that while a witness to an accident doesn't have to answer questions by a police officer, a driver is required by law to identify himself and give information concerning the accident. Sometimes a driver such as this one is too excited to answer questions. A smart officer will give him a chance to get himself under control before questioning him. The tow truck has been called, and the investigation at the scene is now finished. Let's follow the officers into the station, and perhaps we can ask them a few questions. Could you explain to us why you go about questioning drivers and witnesses so systematically and carefully?
Be glad to. For one thing, it adds to the total information regarding the accident. For another, it can verify or disprove opinions based on observations of physical evidence.
But about the actual questioning, do you have a formula which you follow?
Not exactly a formula. We do have a set of rules. For example, our first rule is, be objective. We try not to be influenced by personal opinions or prejudices. We try to remain impersonal even though the driver or witness is hostile. Next, be positive. We approach everyone as if we were in complete control of the situation. We don't ask a witness, "You don't know anything about this, do you?" Instead, we ask, "What did you see?" Next, we try to be specific. We make our questions understood if we can. We don't ask, "Where were you going?" Instead, we ask, "Which direction were you driving prior to the accident?" We make sure we understand the answers we get. And it's important to be diplomatic, understanding, patient, and sympathetic. It helps to get reliable information. A good investigator will avoid conflicts. He keeps himself out of the middle by not trying to settle differences between drivers. He doesn't suggest answers by asking questions like, "Would you say you were going about 35 miles an hour?" It's better to ask, "How fast do you think you were going?" To get the best information, an investigator must be adaptable. When one set of questions is unproductive, he should be able to take a new tack. In other words, an officer should not get himself into a rut by asking every witness the same set of questions.
Do you have one cardinal rule you follow to get the best information at the scene of an accident?
This isn't exactly a cardinal rule, but it's very important. A good investigator never demands information. He usually gets what he needs by winning the cooperation of everyone involved. In other words, be courteous when questioning drivers and witnesses in accident cases.